Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Just let me know if anyone can't hear me, if anyone's having trouble with sound. I know last week there was someone that had a bit of trouble, so just put it in the question box there and I will help you out. So today's webinar, we've got curriculum on demand, flipped learning and at-home instructions in upper primary. My name is Kendall Havenstein and I am the Smart Technologies Australia New Zealand Marketing and Operations Manager, and I'm going to be today's co-host. I'll be here supporting the presenter in the background. If you have any questions throughout, you can do so, and I will be here to answer those, and we'll also have a question and answer segment at the end. I'm going to quickly go through some housekeeping slides now, and then I'm going to hand it over to today's presenter. So first things first, to control your control panel, which I just briefly went over, you can shrink it for those it might be in the way, and it will pop down to that size there. And if you would like to answer a question, you can do so by typing it into the question box, or you can come off mute. You can raise your hand and I'll take you off mute. We will have questions and answers at the end. You'll be able to ask the presenter directly any questions. So if something pops up in your mind throughout, still feel free to type it into the question box. I may be able to answer it, or I may save it up to the end. So if you don't get a direct answer straight away, it's because I know that either the presenter is going to naturally answer it as her presentation evolves, or I'm going to save it up to ask it at the end. But if there's any technical difficulties, urgent questions, I'll be here to answer any of those. So you can earn a attendance certificate for this webinar if you log into training.smarttech.com and then click on learn more and the certification box, and then you find this webinar. All our webinars will pop up, so you just navigate to the webinars that you have attended and that you want to earn certificates for, and then at the end of those webinars there'll be a mark complete button. If you just click on that, and then automatically a PDF certificate will download with your name on it. So our webinars are now NESA accredited. I can get my slides working here. Yep, they're now NESA accredited for anyone that would like to gain an hour. These webinars are 1 hour, so to do that, there'll be an automatic survey that pops up at the end. So you don't need to do anything. It should just automatically pop up, and you need your NESA number handy. Without that NESA number, I can't submit your hours under ETAM, so just make sure you have that included, and you do need to complete the entire survey to gain that hour. So if you have any issues with that, I will also put my email into the chat, and you can let me know of any issues. Okay, so today's presenter, we have the awesome Courtney Burgess. Courtney is based in Sydney. She's got 5 years experience in early childhood and primary education sectors. She's directed 2 early childhood centres, I believe, at the same time. Not at the same time. She has extensive experience in content creation and education marketing, which means she knows exactly what teachers are after in terms of lesson content. She's a certified educator in computer science, ECE and K-6, and she's currently at ProAV helping educators and schools reach their technology goals. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Courtney.
Hey there guys, my name is Courtney Burgess and I am very lucky to be spending this hour with you today while we talk about flipped classrooms and all things Smart Learning Suite online. So thank you for taking the time out of your afternoon. I know a lot of you have probably just said goodbye to your students for the day, so thank you for making yourself a nice cup of tea and joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Kendall, for such a lovely introduction. You've made me sound a lot more legit than I actually am. But yes, I have had the pleasure of working in early childhood centres and in primary schools over my 5 years in the sector. Gee, what do I say about that? Kendall mentioned that I may have been doing 2 of them at once. Absolutely not. Running 1 is a superhuman feat alone, and I frankly do not have it in me to run 2 at once. I don't know if anybody does, but if you know anyone that has, please send them my thanks. So my code is 101675. So head on over to hellosmart.com. You guys all know where to go, and pop in that class code, which is 101675. If you didn't get it, don't worry, it's going to pop up again at the end. I can see that one of you was with me Ben, hey Ben, how's it going? I know you're joining us from Victoria, so I hope you're keeping nice and safe down there. And we are going to get stuck into it. So this sort of stuff we've already covered about the questions. If you do have any, please pop them in that chat box. I would love to hear what you guys are thinking. So please don't hesitate to ask any question. No question is silly. Go nuts. I had a lot of questions when I first started on my flipped classroom journey. So please know that you can ask me anything and I will answer you as best as I possibly can. So a lot of this we've already covered. You guys know a little bit about me. So I do work at a wonderful company called ProAV Solutions, and we have a great partnership with my friends here at Smart. We are resellers of smart boards, smart learning suite online, and anything smart tech. So please, if you do need any help with that stuff, all of my contact details are in here. So please don't be hesitant to give me a shout out. You know where to find me. You can come and get me at any point in time. So today's webinar, what are we actually going to be doing? So as you guys know, we're here to talk about flipped classrooms today. Some of you may have experience with flipped classrooms, some of you may be considering it, some of you may just want to know more. So this is great to cover off what we're actually going to be discussing today. So what's our purpose? What are we going to spend this hour trying to achieve? So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to discover the value of that flipped learning model in your classroom and how that can really support your students and how it can support you as well in the long run. We're going to investigate how we can actually use a flipped learning model in a school and how that can support at-home learning. Some of you guys might be joining us from Victoria, so you might be joining us from anywhere in the world, and I think no matter where you are, remote learning is a very real possibility if you're not already doing it. So we're absolutely going to discuss how you can bring this into your remote learning to hopefully keep your sanity over the coming weeks, months, and hopefully not years. And we're going to talk how we're going to apply and incorporate all of these ideas into the teaching practice. So how are we actually going to do that? We're going to look at Smart Learning Suite, my favorite thing in this universe. We're going to look at some best practice pedagogies, and there's going to be lots of time for you guys to reflect on your current classroom practices and where you'd like those classroom practices to get to in the future as well. Hopefully, at the end of this hour, you'll be leaving with a deeper understanding of that flipped learning model and how you can use it to support at-home instruction or how you can use it in your classroom. And hopefully, you have a few ideas and a little action plan about how you can flip your classroom if you choose to do so. So enough of all that, let's get into it. So if you haven't already joined my class, I'm going to pop this class code up again for you now. Use your tablet, your computer, if you need to, use a phone, and head over to hellosmart.com. There, it's going to ask you for a class code. So feel free to pop that class code in right there. It's 101675, and then get ready to learn. While we're waiting for some of you guys to come on in today, feel free to jump into the chat box and put any questions you have about flipped learning in there already. I know we haven't gotten stuck into anything yet, but please feel free to pop them in because then I know to address them over the next hour. And the more I know about what you guys need, the more I can make sure we get what we need. So I can see that number coming up there. I'll just give you guys a few more seconds to jump on. I know sometimes you're sitting there and you're refreshing and your internet isn't working and it's all a bit of a disaster. So I'll just give some time for the stragglers to jump on in because I don't want to go ahead without anybody. And if you are having any issues connecting, please feel free to pop them in the chat box and we will talk you through that. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I'm just going to cough very safely, might I add, before we move on. Okie dokie. So the first thing I have here for you guys is a little shout out. For those of you who are familiar with smart technologies and Smart Learning Suite, you may be using these in your classroom already, but shout outs are one of my favorite tools that you can use because it is a great way to capture student thinking, student feeling, and anything and everything in between that. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is I'm going to start this activity for you now, and I just want you to put in, just in text, type in some of the concerns you have about flipping a classroom. If you don't have any concerns, I would love for you to put in some of your ideas about how it's been effective for you, or how you found your students have reacted, or even concerns about how you're going to continue with the flipped learning model when you're moving into at-home learning. And you guys can see my screen, so you will see those ideas as you pop up. So Kim, new to the concept, absolutely. Thank you for letting me be the person to help you start your journey on this one. I hope I lead you down the right path. Kim, I'm sure I will. But I was also so new to this concept when I started. When I first started this, I had only been teaching in a classroom for about 2 years. And I was, for lack of better words, I was on struggle street. I could not engage the students. I was teaching year 6, and they wanted to be their own learners, but it was so hard to engage them. I wanted them to be ready for high school, but a lot of them were still stuck at that year 5 level. Ben, what you said there, the tech skills, I was terrified with the tech skills. Are my tech skills going to be good enough? Are students going to be excited about what I'm doing? And even beyond that, with the tech skills, is the tech going to be safe for students? At any point in time when you're asking students to get onto the internet, whether you're there with them or their parents are there with them, or if they're alone at home, the internet can be a super dangerous place. So how do we manage that? How can we make sure that it is helping? So I love these ideas that are coming up with you guys. I know I've only shared so far all of the concerns I had, but that's okay. I'm going to get to all the good stuff later. So I'm just going to organize these into a few things. So we've got a few about what this is going to mean for the class. Is it going to engage students? What if my tech skills aren't enough? Is it going to be effective with those real-time responses? And of course, is it valuable? Does it actually work? A very good question from Ben there as well. And how to use Smart Notebook? Great question. I'm not going to be going too much into Smart Notebook, but there are a ton of webinars on this term, and there's lots of online learning resources for that. My personal advice for Smart Notebook, it is my favorite thing, and the best thing you can do is just play with it. Put aside 30 minutes of your time and just fiddle, press every button you can and just see what happens. I'm very lucky to be a Smart certified trainer, but even then, I don't think I know everything that Smart Notebook does. So you've just got to get in there and play with it and just go, honestly, just go nuts with it, and you will discover it as you go along. And that would be my main recommendation for Smart Notebook. I know that wasn't very formal, but there is lots of training available on that, and I'm sure they'll be covered as well later on in this term as well. So one that's coming up a lot is how do we keep the kids engaged? So when I came up with this question, when you're looking at a flipped classroom, and we'll go into this soon, is a lot of the flipped classroom model is that students are doing the main content delivery is actually being delivered to students when they're not in school with you. They're at home when they're learning a lot of the big meaty content of subjects. And I know exactly what you're thinking. If they're not engaged, they're not going to get it, and then it's going to be a disaster. They're not going to meet their learning outcomes, so on and so forth. All of these concerns are super, super valid. But what I found is when I started the journey of the flipped classroom for my year 6s, I at first was really, really concerned that they weren't going to be engaged. But what I actually discovered, and what I think is true for a lot of students, particularly in this day and age, is that they want to be in charge of their learning. And when you give them that power and you put them in that driver's seat, I think you'll find that they stay on the road. And I did have a student, I had a few students in the beginning that didn't engage with that content at home. And I'll tell you right now, they only didn't do it once because they came into school and everybody else had the knowledge and was able to participate in all these cool activities, and they didn't have the knowledge to do it. So I think you'll find it is something that comes with time. It comes with consistency and with staying at it. But if you can engage your students in the classroom, you can engage them anywhere. I truly believe that we as teachers are superhuman people. And if anyone could do it, it would be us. So my advice for that would be stick with it. Do not give up on it. And let your students know that they're in charge of their learning. And it's a great way to prepare them for the future as well. when they're going into university and even into high school and even into the workplace, they're going to be responsible for themselves, for their own upskilling, for their own development, and for their own learning. And when we're doing a flipped classroom, we're giving them the skills they need to succeed in future life. So don't forget that you are training them for life as well as for the next exam that they have. Upskilling staff, Kat, amazing question. It is always an issue, basic confidence with technology. Once again, the best recommendation I have is just to play with it. I know that seems very informal and almost a silly suggestion, but that is how students learn. You know, we don't stand there and talk at students for hours and hours. We let them try and we let them have a go. And it's the exact same with technology. You've just got to let them get their hands stuck into it and just give it a go. June, sorry, it comes up with JUN. I'm going to assume it's June. If it isn't, I'm very sorry. Not sure what this might mean for your class. That's totally fine. Every class is different. Every teacher is different. Every school and student is different. So my recommendation here is let your class discover what it's going to mean with you. And I'll go into that a little bit later, and I'll tell you one of the stories from my own class and how we did that. So we'll be coming back to that. And then finally, notifying the parents. Do I need to notify them of the changes? Do I need to get them on board? Look, Ben, yes, you do need to get parents on board. If this is the way you're going to deliver learning, you need the parents, as you do in anything. It's a partnership and you want to be in it together. So, you know, don't hesitate to say to the parents, we're going to try this with us, and ask them to come on that journey with you and really turn that partnership into something special. And, you know, it's all about taking parent engagement from that level where it's beyond the school bake sale and the student reports, and it goes that next level where it's supporting student learning. So absolutely get the parents involved, get stuck into it, so on. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your concerns, guys. That was fantastic. So I'm going to get stuck into some of the content behind flipped classrooms now. And this is my golden rule. So some of you mentioned that you were new to the concept of flipping your classroom. Oh, look who didn't lock their words on Smart Learning Suite Online. Sorry, that might happen a little bit. Anyway, so the golden rule for flipping your classroom is this, right here. If it has direct instruction, you can flip it. When you're starting doing your flipped classrooms, you might go, oh, will this work? I'm not sure how to do this. Ask yourself this question. Does it have direct instruction? Yes, you can flip it. It is as simple as that. When you're deciding what to flip, what not to flip, that is the golden rule of a flipped classroom. And keep that in your mind and really go from there with it. So, what exactly is a flipped classroom? So, a flipped classroom, as you guys may be aware or may not be aware, it's a blended learning model. So, when we say blended learning, we mean students at home and students in the classroom, or students wherever it is that they may be, whether that's on an overseas holiday or in hospital or wherever. It's basically bringing together different learning areas and bringing it all together. And it is all about giving students the power. So, why is it important to give students power? As I mentioned just a few seconds ago, when you give students the power in their learning and you put them in that driver's seat, they want to take the wheel. They are naturally curious and they naturally want to improve. And when you give them that opportunity to be almost little adults, when we're talking about students in year 5, year 6, you know, they're at that age, they want to be grown up, they want to be more involved in their lives and in their learning and all of those sorts of things. So you're giving them the power to do something that they really want to do. And you're putting that trust in them. And I think you'll find that if you trust them, they will trust you right back. And it is a journey that you guys go on together with your students. I know that I absolutely did. So what else is there about flipped classrooms? Your primary delivery of content and instruction is online. So the best way I can think of this is, I don't know if any of you have taught on it and or learnt on it, depending on your age, but Maths Online is a great example of this. So Maths Online, if you're not familiar with it, it is basically an online learning management system, or LMS. You can go onto it and you can do quick 5-minute videos that show you how to do things. For example, how to add fractions or how to turn a decimal into a percentage. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a real maths brain here. Well, it is Maths Online. So anyway, there's plenty of them for other things. I know that Sector is another version of that, and there's lots of them out there. So basically what you're doing with a flipped classroom is during the school day, you're doing teacher instruction, you're doing projects, you're doing hands-on, play-based, if you can, if you want to, learning in your classroom. So the children are exploring, they're creating, they're discovering. We're up in that higher level of Bloom's taxonomy during the day when they're with you. And then when they're at home, that's when they're doing the lower levels, where they're just learning things, they're not quite applying their knowledge, they're just discovering it and investigating it. So you might think, but what happens at home if they don't understand the content? This is a very, very good point. When you're doing a flipped classroom and you're sending home videos for students to learn with, they can watch that video as many times as they want, and you can send out extra resources to help them understand. And the way I like to think of this is I like to go back to when I was in Year 6, personally, many years ago now, and I was asked to do an assignment on Antarctica, as many people were in Year 6, as the curriculum is. And I had no idea about Antarctica. I didn't know a thing about it. And even worse, my parents didn't know a thing about it. So they weren't able to help me. Whereas if you can flip the idea, imagine I was doing that project at school. I now have my students, my fellow students to help me. I now have the resources of a school, like a library or internet or anything, you know, and then I have the resource of the teacher. So it's actually giving students that opportunity to apply their learning in a safe environment where they can go to other people for help. So that's a really good way to think of it when we're talking about a flipped classroom. So basically, when we're talking flipped classrooms, you go back to that golden rule. There's direct instruction, flip it. You can do it, try it. If it goes wrong, then it goes wrong. It doesn't matter. When I started my flipped classroom, the first lesson I did it on was equivalent fractions, which was probably a little bit brave of me, but anyway. And I said to my students who were in Year 6, I said, we're going to do this lesson twice this week. We're going to do it once normally, and we're going to do it once flipped. And you can tell me what you like and why you liked it. And we did both. I looked at the student results and the student reflections from both. And we actually had a classroom council when we talked about it. And they all said, oh, we loved that we could learn at home because I could watch it as many times as I wanted. And I didn't have to ask my parents for help. And I could do it whenever I wanted to. And I could pause it, so on and so forth. And I basically said to them, I said, okay, well, do you want to keep flipping things? And they said, yeah, let's keep doing it. And all of a sudden we were flipping English, and then we flipped history, and it got to a point where I had flipped art classes, and every single lesson I delivered in my classroom was a flipped classroom learning model, and it really worked. And I actually had a lot of the parents contact me the year after when those Year 6s were off in high school saying, my student was ready for high school. They are an independent learner. They can take control. They have, what's the word? They have an understanding of the consequences of not being an active learner, and they became more passionate about their learning. So when I say go on this journey with your students, I really mean it. Let them have a voice, ask them to be involved in it, and go down that road together, and I think you'll find that you receive a lot of success. So what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to get you guys to do a little sample lesson plan. So you all have your little individual handouts. So click on into it, and what I've given you is actually the equivalent fractions lesson plan that I flipped about 3 years ago now. So jump in there and just write down, it doesn't have to be in depth, doesn't have to be fancy, but maybe give me 3 points on how you might flip this lesson. And I'm going to click through and we're going to look at some student progress as you guys work through that. It does not have to be beautiful, it doesn't have to be fancy. I'm going to jump into Ben just because he's first. He's very keen. He's not writing anything yet. He's taking his time to read it. Good job. You need to read the question. before you answer the question. Exam 101, although this isn't an exam. We can see Kathy says that she's done. I can see it here because of the little tick that she's put up. Well done, Kathy, but she isn't done, but that's okay. So basically, as you guys are writing in here, I can see what you're doing and I can actually annotate back to you as well. So this is a great thing that you could do, especially if you're doing remote learning and you've got students learning at home. This is a really effective way that you can do things. In a flipped classroom learning situation, when you're doing remote learning, Smart Learning Suite Online is a great resource to use because you can be there, but you can also not. I could flick this to student facing at any time and I could send that link out to my students and they could work through this entire thing without me. And I could come on in, take a look, give them feedback and send that out to them as well individually for each student. So if we go in and have a look at Kim's, maybe Kim's written something for us. Not yet. I asked you guys a big question. That's pretty fair. But while we're waiting, I'll actually tell you how I flipped this lesson. So I was doing equivalent fractions, as you know, which I was terrified of because firstly, my students weren't great at. They weren't great at fractions. And secondly, I'm terrible at them. So when we got to that fractions term, it was term 2, I was not a happy camper. I was actually, in fact, dreading it. And I went, how can I possibly do this? And I was actually really, really worried that I was going to stuff up while I was teaching it. And I thought, well, what if I put it in video format? And that's exactly what I did. So I got, sorry, Ben, I'm also going to write here on, I hope you don't mind. I'm sure he'll be fine with it. But what I did was I got the learning outcome. As with anything, you're going to start with your learning outcome. So I went, okay, students are going to learn how to produce equivalent fractions. How can I do that? So I used a smart notebook and I recorded myself doing it. I showed them how to do examples. It was probably a 5-minute video. I used some pictorial examples. I used some proper, 1/2 is equal to 2/4 sort of examples. I used pictures to show that. I wrote it. I showed out step by step exactly what I was doing. And I pushed that video out to my students. I sent it out to them and I said, I want you to watch this. And then I gave them well, it wasn't a Smart Learning Suite Online thing, not at that point in time, but I gave them a simple task that they could do based on what I gave them. And that task was to say, write for me in 6 words what you learnt. So I had all of them do that miniature reflection for me. And then when we were in class, I firstly cut out all of this because I'd already done it. I didn't need to do that. They understood the numerator and the denominator. They knew how to make equivalent fractions. They'd seen examples. So I went straight to the body of the lesson. So I saved myself, maybe 20 minutes of instruction time in that hour that I had. And then we looked at the step-by-step examples. Did I do step-by-step examples? Yes, I absolutely did. You always need to reinforce the learning, as you guys would know, but I didn't do the step-by-step examples for the students. I asked them to come up and do it for me. So they all did it together. They worked in small groups to do their step-by-step examples. I monitored the classroom learning. And then we went to this section. They worked with a partner. They made equivalent fractions. They presented their work to the class. They did it in a pictorial format. They did it in a writing format. They gave me equivalents by doubling. They gave me equivalents by tripling. I think some of them gave me equivalents by multiplying by 10, which is probably the easiest way to make equivalent fraction anyway. And we had so much extra time to do this that the students were able to explore it in a much more in-depth way instead of a quick, all right, we've got 10 minutes and then the lunch bell's going to go, and then after lunch we've got library in. You guys know what it's like. So by saving myself that time, I gave students more uninterrupted learning time. I can see there's a question here from Kathy. Hi, Kathy, firstly, hello. So if when you enter it and it goes to done, can they go back? Yes, students can go back in. If you give them that link to go into a Smart Learning Suite Online presentation, they can go in and change it at any point in time. So they do not have to, it's not like once it's in forever. It is there, you can see it, but they are welcome to go back in. So if you've gone in and you've given them some feedback, so if I was to go into yours, Kathy, I could go in, I could give you some feedback. I could say, that's great, doing YouTube relevant recordings. I love the way you've done this because firstly, you didn't reinvent the wheel. I like to make my own videos, but you certainly don't have to. A lot of people are already doing it for you. So you can use those, go to teacher recordings, slideshows, perfect. And I could say, that's great. Or I might say, hey, can you put more detail on this? And then when you went back to check it, Kathy, you would see that I gave you that feedback and you could actually redo it and give me a new version based off that feedback. And students can totally do that at any point in time as well. So let's pull up one other person's just to look. Let's look at Tiffany's. Ooh, accidentally right-clicked. Gamification. Yes, Tiffany, I love it. Gamification is the best and it always works, especially when you're looking at students in year 5, year 6. They love gamification. I love to use Minecraft in maths. I know a lot of teachers do that. I kind of thought it would be uncool by now, but Minecraft is still cool, so I'm still doing it. So great ideas. The breakout sessions, having students in pairs, that is a fantastic way to do it, Tiffany. Well done. So we're going to move on to the next thing now. So it will rip you out of that. I'm sorry if you didn't finish. I'm going to put here. So I'm going to quit out of Smart Learning Suite Online just for a second. So if all you can see is this screen, you might not be in the right place. Because I'm going to quickly go over to Smart Notebook. In Smart Notebook, you can actually record yourself in live time using Smart Notebook, and it can actually record your voice as well if you're recording on a smart board or even on a laptop. You can do it. So this was how I made my videos. It was the easiest way to do it, and it was already in Smart Notebook, which was something that I was familiar with and something that my students were familiar with as well. There are 2 different ways to record. There is a video record option built into Smart Notebook. I will warn you, that one doesn't actually record your voice. There's a second one you can use. And I'm not on my own laptop, so I really hope this is here. But I'm going to pull this up. And if I come down here, there's this little, so I'm going to draw on it. Oh, it's about there. You'll see when it pops up. It's in the circle. It was pretty close. This little one, you can press on this and you can say recorder. I'm not going to press, well, I can press it. It doesn't really matter. I hope this doesn't ruin the webinar. Anyway, come across for me, friendo. Oh, thank you. And I can press record on this and it will record my voice. It will record everything that I'm doing on Smart Notebook. And what you can do is you can actually set it to record your entire screen, or you can set it to record just Smart Notebook. So if you're not wanting them to see things that are also hanging out on your screen, you don't have to. Once you've finished it, you stop that recording and it will automatically save as your average video file. I'm going to say it's MP4. I think it's still MP4. And then you can pop that in Seesaw. You can put it in your Google Classroom. You can upload it to YouTube. You can do whatever you want with it to send it out to your students. So that is my biggest tip for doing remote learning and for doing that flipped classroom, is that you can use that tactic. And I personally really like it because it's simple. I like it because I don't need to use software that I'm not familiar with. I don't love learning new things, particularly when I know what I like. So that is probably my best suggestion there. And then before we get into the review section of this, I just want to leave you with this thought. Do not forget, if you have been teaching for at least the past 6 months, if you have done remote learning, if you have done coronavirus or are still doing it, you've already flipped your classroom. You're at least halfway there because you're already making videos to send to students. You're already giving them direct instruction online. So if you're thinking about doing it and you're not sure, remember that you're already 50 to 60% of the way there. The hardest part of it has been done. You've already conquered that. So if you want to continue on, you are in the best place you can possibly be in to continue on with flipping your classroom. So do not forget that, which is why I wrote it in these lovely big words. Oh, there I am again. Who didn't lock their Smart Learning Suite? Me. And I've just got a little review game for us here. So I'm going to let you guys complete it individually on your own devices. I will give you a few minutes to do that. This is a really good time. If you do have questions, pop them in that chat box and let me know what you're thinking. But otherwise, jump into this little flipped classroom review. And it's very cute. This is one of the games that you can build using Smart Learning Suite online. You can do it in minutes. And basically what you're doing is you're organizing the things into different teams. So there's Team Knight and Team Dragon. Personally, I'm Team Dragon, but you can be Team Knight, that's fine too. And when you're doing this, you literally just drag it up. So I can say in a traditional classroom, the teacher has most of the power. You pop it straight into that treasure box. And the dragon does a little dance, how cute. And then we can make the knight do a little dance if we put the other one into the flipped classroom, so on and so forth. So I will let you guys play through that review for a second before we move on to the next thing, which will be very shortly. I'm just going to quickly have a sip of water while you guys are doing that. Oh, that's much better. And then, of course, I will go through these with you guys now. So if you haven't finished it, I'm sorry, I'm about to spoil it for you. Spoiler alert. In a flipped classroom, as we've discussed, students have the power. So we're going to drag that little crown over here. When we're talking about a flipped classroom, we can also say that your projects are carried out in the classroom, that in-depth, exploratory application of knowledge, that's happening in the classroom if you have a flipped classroom. If you are in a traditional classroom, and please don't get me wrong, if you decide not to do a flipped classroom, there is nothing wrong with a traditional classroom. I learned in a traditional classroom and I turned out fine. Everything works different for different teachers, and you've got to do what feels right for you and what feels right for your classroom and for your students. In your traditional classroom, your primary content delivery is carried out there, and your projects are often going to be your home assignments, your activities, etc., etc. Your exploratory activities occur in a classroom in your flipped classroom, and in a traditional classroom, you sort of get a fun little mixture. There's some at home, there's some in the classroom. And if you do this all right, the dragon and the knight become friends. And I just wanted to show you that because I think it's really cute. So, are you flipping out? You can read this in two ways. One can be, are you flipping out? Like, are you panicking? And two, do you think you're going to flip your classroom? So this is another little shout out, and what I'm going to get you guys to do is pop a picture in here for me. It can be a picture you get from the internet. It can be a picture of yourself if you're feeling brave, just to show me how you're feeling now about flipped classrooms before we get to the question and answer section of this. So tell me how you're feeling. I would love to know where you guys are at. Do some reflection, take your time, and really consider how you're feeling about possibly flipping your classroom and how you're feeling about your skill to do that at this point in time. So I will give you guys some time to either take your beautiful selfie or find something on the internet. Please do not feel pressured. You do not have to give me a selfie if you do not want to. I'm a big fan of them personally, but Kim, ooh, I'm gonna take this as inquisitive. I'm not sure if that's right, but this is a really good one, Kim, because there is a lot to learn and I can't possibly cover it all in 1 hour, not without sending you guys to sleep. So this is a really good way to put it, is that you're feeling inquisitive and there is a lot to learn. Like Alice said, it's a bit of a pyramid. It does need a little bit of conquering. But you can really get there, and do not be afraid to stuff it up. You know, I started with one class, one tiny little lesson, and I flipped it just to see if it would work. And then I tried another one to see if it would continue to work. And it kind of just worked out for me, and it was amazing. So yes, there is a lot to learn, and yes, it is a hill to climb, but I mean, people climb Mount Everest every year, right? So you can do it if you want to, and if you do feel passionate about trying this in your classroom, just try it with one lesson. Pick a lesson, any lesson, out of a hat, whatever, and just see how you go with it. And ask your students to come on that journey with them and say, hey, what did you think? How did you feel about it? What would you change? And together you will find that happy medium, or you'll go one way or another, and both of them are okay. Kat, I'm so excited. From like the best movie in history as well. Who doesn't love Elf at any time of the year? It does not have to be Christmas. It doesn't even have to be Christmas in July. That movie is the best, and I will go down with that shit. But I am so glad, Kat, that you are feeling excited about doing a flipped classroom. I felt so excited. Once I discovered that it was going to work, I was so pumped, and I ended up flipping every single lesson for an entire year, and it was fabulous, and the students were into it, and it just worked out so well that I personally would never go back now. And every year when students come into my classrooms and they go, oh, am I going to get to learn from home? And I'm always like, yes. And they jump up and down, just like Buddy from Elf. And they're like, this is so cool. And that never gets old. Tiff, a big smiley face. I love it. Ben, a little minion, hands in the air. Also a big smiley face. I love it. And another smiley face from June. Oh, yay. I'm glad everyone is feeling confident or inquisitive or excited and happy. It is a bit of an emotional journey. I've had arguments with my laptop. You will have arguments with your laptop, but just keep exploring and keep trying it until you know that it's not going to work. Keep going for it. I cannot recommend it more than that. So with that, I'm going to ask you guys now, we're going to do some questions. Every single school is different. Every single classroom is different. So pop your questions in. Anything that you've got for me, I will do my very best to answer, or even tell you a little bit about one of my own experiences and how it worked for me. So pop those questions in and I will answer them for you. If you don't know how to ask questions, there is some instructions on how you can do that on the board. If you don't have any questions, then I have done my job here surprisingly well. But no question is silly, no question is wrong. So please go ahead and ask me whatever you've got and we will work through it together. So I'll give you guys a few seconds. If you do have questions, to pop them in there and then we will go from there. Amazing. Okay, well, it looks like I've done my job incredibly well if there are no questions. If you do have questions and you don't want to put them in the chat box, my email can be found on the back of this. So please feel free to shoot me an email if you want to. I'll be more than happy to help any of you guys flip your classrooms or answer any questions that you have, whether they're about flipped learning, whether they're about Smart Learning Suite, whether they're about Smart Notebook, if they're about Smart Boards. Really, truly email me. I have nothing better to do. No, that's not true. I do, but I really want to hear from you guys. Ooh, Ben. Oh, he's asked me a hard one. Okay. How would you approach flipping a Year 8 history lesson? So, as you guys know, most of my experience in flipped classrooms is with upper primary, Year 4, Year 5, Year 6. If I was going to be flipping a Year 8 lesson, like on ancient Greece. Sorry, I shouldn't. I technically should know about ancient Greece. I definitely did ancient history in the HSC. But look, where I would start is I like to start with a video. So I would kick off by, if it was me personally, because I don't know a lot about ancient Greece, whoops, sorry, I would start with my trendy friend YouTube. See what I could find on ancient Greece. There is a lot of amazing stuff out there, particularly if you look at National Geographic and all of those sorts of, ADC, all of those sorts of experiences. I would find a video that was going to work for the topic that I was covering. If I didn't find a video that would work, I would have to do the research and make a video. That's also fine. With a video, I always ask the students to do something as well, just so I know that they have watched that video and engaged with that content. So that can be anything from a quick reflection activity to an actual worksheet. I'm a very big fan of the exit ticket. So I would ask them to do an exit ticket and maybe draw what they learned from the video, or explain it in 6 pictures, or give me a 10-word sentence that summarizes it, something that gives them a challenge so they're keen to engage in it, but something that can help them summarize their learning. I'm also a really, really big fan of a Kwl chart for that. If you're not familiar with them, the what I know, what I want to know, what I have learned is also a great way to do that. You can ask the students to do the K and the W before the video, watch the video, and then fill out the L. So I would go down that route. Once they were in class, that's when we would actually get into the hands-on learning section. So I would probably look at, if it was ancient Greece, maybe a little bit of role play. I know whenever I was in high school, myself as a student, and they were like, oh, we're going to do role play. I'd be like, oh, please, no, don't make me. But it was actually really fun once I got into it. So I would look for a role play kind of situation, or maybe have the students work in groups to cover different topics. A lot of the time when you're looking at history, you're looking at different parts of history. So you might look at the food, the religion, architecture and buildings, important people, so on. You might break them into groups and ask them to do some research and come back together as a class and present that. You might ask them to engage in some role play, or write a story, or write a diary entry from someone who was in ancient Greece. So I would go in that kind of route for that. And Ben, there's another question here. When I come back into the classroom after I've done a flip session, do I start with a Q&A? Yes, I absolutely do. I do like to just make sure that we're touching base. Usually I would do that in a brainstorm format. Sometimes I do it as a game. I would use a shout it out, or once again, coming back to that KWL or a SWOT analysis. If it's relevant, I love a good SWOT analysis. So yes, I would definitely bring them in to do a quick Q&A, touch base before we moved on. And I have another question here from Junko. I'm sorry, I must have called you June earlier in the session. Very sorry about that. I took a guess. It was wrong. I apologize. Do I spend more time preparing my lessons because I have to record the lessons beforehand? This is a really good question and a very good concern to have. No. In short, no, not anymore. When you're making your videos, if that's the way you choose to go, make them as you would teach them. At the beginning, I was like, oh, I'm going to put in like cool effects and oh, all this sort of stuff. It isn't necessary. You don't need to make it perfect. If you stumble over your words in the video, it doesn't matter. So I would literally get up and make that video as I would teach it in a classroom, and then I would send it out. So look, in the beginning, there's definitely going to be more of a time commitment. But once you've made the videos, it is a cakewalk. I've never had to re-record equivalent fractions, because it turns out some things don't change. So a lot of those videos, once you've made them, you will actually find that you're in a really good spot with that. So it's a long-term commitment, I know, but yes, it does take a little bit longer in the beginning, but once you've got it down, I think you'll find that it's really worthwhile, and you will start earning that time back, I promise. Just see if I've got another question down here. I do. Do I share my videos virtually, or do I give them recordings on USB sticks? Sorry, I've got my little thing. I'm thinking about kids who might not have excessive internet access. This is a very good question, Ben, and a very good concern to have as well. Usually I would share them virtually using something like Seesaw or Google Classroom and sending them the video, or as I would also do is I made a private YouTube channel. So the only people that can view the YouTube video are the people with the link, and then I would send that link out to students to watch. So that was very effective for me. But when you're talking about kids that might not have internet access, you make a very good point. Look, it's about knowing your students, and it's about going with the flow. So when I did decide to commit to the flipped classroom, I did work with the parents. I explained to them what I was trying to do. I showed them how it was going to work. And I invited them to let me know what the internet access / laptop / device access was at their house. And those of them that didn't have that capability, I found other ways. So one of them was that USB stick for students that didn't have great internet access. They would have a USB stick and they would bring it into school. I would load it up with what they needed and I would send it home to them at the end of the day. So that is a good way to do it. But I think, once again, it's all about that parent partnership, talking with the parents about what they need, asking the students what they want, and meeting them in the middle is the best way to do that. But look, in this day and age, most students will know someone where they can use internet, whether that's going to a library or sitting at Macca's. You know, free Wi-Fi is everywhere and it is accessible. But yeah, work with your parents, discover what they need and find that middle ground would be my best advice for that one. So I hope that helps. I hope I've covered all of the questions. I'm just going to check that there isn't one sitting around. No? Okay, perfect. Well, as I said, guys, if you do have any more questions that you didn't want to stick in the chat, that is totally fine. My email, I will ask Smart when they send out the follow-up, I'll ask them to put my contact details in there. So if you do have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm available literally anytime to help any of you. So shoot me a text, ask me what you need, and we will help something. I'm more than happy to give you guys any guidance, or if you want someone to just watch one of your videos and say, hey, do you think this would work? Send it to me. I would love to see what you guys are doing, and I would love to be a part of that journey with you as well. So with that, I'm going to hand back over to Kendall. She will take wonderful care of you from here. But before I do, I'm just going to quickly do a plug. My fantastic colleague from Priority Solutions is hosting the next webinar on this session. I'm going to be tuning into it. So if you are not planning on tuning into the next one, please, I implore you to do so. He is amazing and you're going to love him. So quick plug for him. Shout out. Anyway, I'm now going to give you guys back to Kendall. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope it's been helpful for you and I hope it's inspired you. And again, any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. But that is where I will leave you guys from here.
Great, thanks Courtney. I'll just bring back my presentation here and we will let everyone go for the afternoon for those who are listening live. Okay, so everyone should be able to see my screen about now. So I'm just going to quickly recap some of the items that I went through at the start of the webinar. For those who may have come in late, you can earn NESA accredited hours for this webinar. As soon as I close off the webinar, there will be a survey that's automatically pushed out. You just need your NESA number handy to put that in there, and you also need to complete the entire survey in order to gain that hour. And I can just see there's another question here. Oh, you've got some comments coming through. Thanks, Courtney. Thank you, Courtney.
Sorry, I'm still here watching. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. It was a great webinar. And we also have our SMEX, which is Smart Exchange, where you can get free resources, free ready-made lessons. And the website for that is content.smarttech.com. And next, you can earn an attendance certificate. So it's not necessarily the NESA accredited. It's just a general attendance certificate to go towards your PD hours. I know some people like to have that as a record. So if you log into training.smarttech.com and then navigate to the certification and then click learn more, then you'll pop up to a page where it'll list all our webinars. You just navigate to this one, and then once you click on that, you scroll to the end of the webinar, click on the Mark Complete button, and then an automatic PDF certificate will be generated with your name on it. So we have upcoming events. We are still going ahead with our Inspire Greatness Conference this year. With hell or high waters, we're going to try to make it happen. We have lots in store. We're definitely strategizing to make it either a virtual event or face-to-face, depending on the restrictions per state. So we're feverishly working away to get that up and running somehow. There will be amazing workshops. There'll be exciting local and international, some international keynotes, phoning in, and there'll be a panel discussion with education leaders. Last year that was very popular. We had 3 principals on the panel discussing the EdTech capabilities of each school, and we had 1 principal from Queensland, 1 and 2 from New South Wales. So that it was super popular then, and we're definitely going to try to make it just as good this year. And we are aiming for it to be in November, and we will save the date. With the save the date, we'll also have more information, so hopefully some solid information come through, and we'll be sending that out by email or social media, and I'll also let you know in the webinars as well. And our upcoming webinars, so we're 2 down already, and we have 4 more to go. So as Courtney mentioned, next week we have delivering high impact teaching and learning in face-to-face and remote learning situation, which is super relevant right now. So that's on next Wednesday, the 12th, already the 12th of August. That is crazy. And then we also have 3 more. We have got on the Wednesday the 19th, Future Frontiers, Education for a Changing World. So that will be hosted by one of the New South Wales DOE Catalyst Lab representatives, and you can get an ebook. If you go to the webinar registration page, you can download an ebook of that book, and I'm also posting out hard copies. So for anyone who hasn't registered for that yet, you can get a hard copy for that. I'll put my email in the chat, and I also have been monitoring the registrants for that webinar and contacting them directly to see if they do want a hard copy of the book. I was at the post office earlier today posting that out. I did have some takers, which is great. So you don't necessarily need to read the book. It is optional. You're still going to get some great takeaway points from that webinar either way. Even if you even choose to read it afterwards, that's fine too. So our second last webinar is Smart Admin Portal and Teachers Smart Accounts, why you need them. So that will be hosted by one of our smart technology people, Molly. And then last but not least, we've got creating simple but effective interactive activities suitable for Smart Notebook and Smart Learning Suite online. And that will bring us to Wednesday, the 2nd of September, which will be our last webinar. So we hope we all see you then. And I'm going to close off the webinar now for those wanting to complete the survey, the NESA survey to gain their hours. Thanks for attending, everyone. Have a nice afternoon. Bye.